Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the LaunchDay Shorts podcast. I'm your host, Dean Cvetkoski, a.k.a. WhoDean, and today in studio we have this wonderful, lovely lady. She goes by the name of Dharshini Hew. Dharshini, how you going?
Good. Thank you so much for having me today.
Absolutely, not a problem at all. Very, very happy and glad to have you on. Dharshini, look, we've had heaps of conversations in the past, opportunities and, a little bit about life, where we've been, where we're going. And, the thing is that I think just so many more people need to hear who you are and where you're going, because I think the journey you've been on so far is just astonishing, honestly. It blows my mind to think of the success you've been able to achieve, which is awesome.
Oh, you're too kind. You're very too kind today.
Absolutely. Darshini, look, I know all the details, but for everyone that's listening at home, the work, the car, wherever they might be, maybe they're sitting on their couch, maybe they're in the shower, I don't know, wherever you might be listening. But these people are going to want to know who you are, what you do, what company you represent. Let's start with some key introductions.
Oh, absolutely. So my name's Dharshini, like you've already introduced me. I have recently launched multiple businesses in the space of 6 months. I guess my entrepreneur journey started in November 2023, which has resulted now to opening up one of the biggest clinics in WA. So it's called
Nice.
Healan Centre. And we specialize in neurodevelopment and mental health services. So we begin with providing services from 0 to 25 years old. And we are launching our adult sector services next week, which is great. So we've been running the business for 3 weeks. So it shows how much we've expanded in such a short space of time, but also the intentions behind wanting to provide quality services to our community.
Absolutely. And that's awesome, right? So we're talking like what's that? 3-4 months fresh, right? So
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the idea, the formation, signing the papers for an ABN, I mean, it all happened so quickly. But yeah, we've launched it we officially started seeing clients on the 15th of January, and what we're sitting now on the 22nd of February. So it's just a bit of a month, and we are excited to be moving into a new space that we are taking over 2 properties to represent our clinical hub.
yeah, nice. That's brilliant. And so what's in terms of your scale plan, right? So you've just opened up the Healan Centre in WA. And so then now you've got other centers that you're opening up as well, or?
It's definitely in the picture. So there's a couple of centres going to be popping up within our eastern states in Australia, which is great because we're able to reach more people. And the main intentions behind these centres are to be able to provide services to as many individuals that are out there within the community that haven't been able to reach to services for over 2 years. So we're definitely meeting a demand and an urgency. So that's behind the passion, I would say, for Healan Centre.
Because I was going to ask that, right? Because I was like, yeah, isn't there, a whole bunch of clinics that are available in, a bunch of different places? For me, I was kind of like, isn't there an oversupply of it? But you're telling me it's in demand and there's a shortage, right? Do you want to cover a couple more details over that?
Yeah, I mean, it'd be surprising, right? No one would actually think of a health service to be at such a shortage rate, especially within a Western country like Australia, where we have so much resources comparison to third world countries or even Asian countries. But to give you an idea and a perspective of where our current urgencies are, is that to get an autism assessment or to get an ADHD assessment for someone between the age of 0 to 18 years old, the current wait list is about 48 months within our public health sector services. And within the private sector services, like private clinics, it takes slightly longer than that because of the models of care that is being applied. So sitting on a 2-year wait list while, you're having difficulties with your mental health or just difficulties being able to function in your day to day, it's honestly a very difficult period of your life.
because you couldn't get, like, for example, with some ADHD medication, some of them are like things like dexamphetamine, sometimes it's that. And because it is an amphetamine-based, drug, it's not something that you can just go and get a prescription for straight away, right? So you're telling me that, like, for people to be able to address their needs from a neurodevelopmental point of view, how long is it taking again?
48 months, a minimum of 48 months if we're lucky. So with the current rise of,
Wow.
I guess, difficulties, and a lot of more awareness is going around within, school sectors and also educational sectors like universities. People are getting more aware that, there are difficulties and there are actual solutions attached to it. But it's the process of getting to that solution, hey? Like, for example, you're saying it's hard to get stimulant medication. And in order to get that, you need the appropriate endorsement to take place. And that's the 48-month wait list at the moment. So no matter if you rock up to your GP, that's not really going to solve the issue. So we've built a service to be able to have a turnaround of a minimum of 1 to 2 weeks at the moment.
Wow. So we're talking taking it from 48 months to 1 to 2 weeks.
Yeah,
You've completely reimagined. Wow, that blows my mind. I have to applaud you for that, because that's brilliant. And like I said, I kind of look at the current situation, the current, I suppose, climate of that, and you have a lot of people on TikTok and things like that as well that are creating videos around ADHD awareness, for example.
Yes.
And so a lot of other people are starting to ask themselves that question. Would you say that a lot of these neurodiversities are more prominent now than they ever have been in the past?
Oh, absolutely. I believe that's there's a little bit of a balance game going on at the moment, especially with social media now being involved, where it's the number one topic that gets sort of, discussed amongst really young individuals within a school setting or even through TikTok videos. But it's also finding that balance, right, of, whether it's this awareness or whether we're creating a trendy label. So
Yeah, that's right.
has specialists that sits within that space where we do encourage social media. We reach out to our communities through social media platforms. We are trying to also sit in that space where we're going, look, let's educate people, and people are getting on board with it, and people are starting to understand that information is starting to become more accessible. Awareness is increasing, which results to more people being supported rather than being isolated within the communities.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I totally get it. And that's a good question to ask, right? Because there's this, I don't know, I feel like not everyone's going to have ADHD. Like, just because, or even like any kind of level of autism, for example. Like, just because you like putting all the blue ones in a row here and all the yellow ones in a row here doesn't necessarily mean you're autistic. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
even though that's
absolutely.
one of the signs, right? Even though that's one of the signs, it doesn't necessarily mean you're autistic. So,
absolutely.
And I think, could you imagine if you suspected that you did have some kind of neurodiversity and, you had to wait 48 months to find out, right?
That's the difficult part. I mean, before I became, an entrepreneur and a young businesswoman, my exposure comes from working in public health sector and also working in private clinics. And one of the most difficult things to do is to be able to sit in that practitioner's seat and tell a family that, look, at the moment, I can't really do anything. And saying that you can't really do anything when you have worked all your life to be able to support people and to be able to be the helping hand when someone, especially in the medical sector, that's a very hard thing to continuously say. On a daily basis, which sort of pushed me to identifying there should be a better way. There should be an efficient way of actually being able to see more individuals within a shorter time span, and also at the same time providing quality service. So reimagining the whole care model, essentially.
And that's, like, honestly, I think that's brilliant. I really do, because even for me, I kind of look at even just some very basic clinical psychology. And I'm not sure if you're doing much in that space, but just as an example, look, there's clinical psychologists that are out there that are kind of average, like they're not that great. Um, that they're more
The
interested in,
basic.
yeah, very, very basic sort of approach. And then,
Yep.
the good ones from the ones that are pretty standard. I won't say bad, but standard.
Mm.
And the thing is that all the decent ones that are out there, they're fully booked. You can't get an
Oh,
appointment. Do you know what I
yep.
mean?
You can't get an appointment, and it's not a new. Unfortunately, it's not just because the service is doing really well, or just because they're great clinicians. Even your average clinicians, your standard clinicians who are fresh graduates, even are getting booked up.
Mm,
And it almost makes you sit in a position of questioning, why is that? Are we missing a really huge factor within our communities? Like, are
mm,
we, oversighting something that should be fixed and the problem is becoming bigger and bigger?
mm.
That's probably the biggest issue that I've had working within the public health sector, not really paying attention to that and not really doing something about it.
Yeah, I get you. I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying. I'm more interested in, like, so we know why you started it, right? So we know
Mm,
why you started this particular business, because you saw a gap, and you wanted to improve it, reimagine it, re-envision what
mm.
that looked like for people. But why did you as an individual go and make this decision to take this path? Was there any sort of underlying, I suppose, ambition that was there, or anything like that?
Definitely. I think it takes a certain individual to be able to challenge the waves and to be able to challenge medical waves, medical authorities and medical professionals who are 20, 30 years within that experience.
Mm,
So for me, I think it falls back down to my personality and who I've been modeling my behaviors on, I would say.
mm,
This is my clinical terms coming already. Essentially, I honestly look up to my mum, who is also, a very successful businesswoman and also a single parent who's
mm,
raised me to understand the values of challenging the norms and to be able to be the difference.
mm,
And it might look in different ways. She is highly successful within the education line, where
mm,
she owns private RTOs to be able to support the resources within our Australian communities to be able to build and expand and to show that, yes, we do have skills available, and we're bringing in more people in for that. And so I've always watched within her footsteps, and I've always, tried to envision myself to be able to go down that same path as she has created for herself and for myself, ideally.
mm.
So yeah, definitely, I believe my personality is highly modeled by her.
Yeah, so and that's kind of your underlying ambition. Like, would
Mm.
you say that you've had a bit of an entrepreneurial spirit about you from an early age? I'm finding that's very common with a lot of
It
people I
feels
interview, right?
very common. I think it's very hard not to be very common, to be honest. Sitting in this bubble, I would say, with other entrepreneurs, one, we're either neurodiverse ourselves, where
Mm,
we're either ADHD and, our brains work a million miles an hour. But I believe that whole entrepreneur mindset started evolving at a very young age, understanding the opportunities and potential. I mean, I migrated to Australia with my mum when I was about 11 years old. And I guess the biggest difference I noticed was within my particular process of thinking, where I understood that there was always an opportunity in every situation, whereas
mm,
individuals within my age group were more fixated in terms of completing the task. So that's where the differences was already quite evident and was sort of screaming within my face. And I enjoyed taking those opportunities to be able to go further and beyond. Because
mm,
if no one else is going to, why not me? What stops
mm,
me from actually doing it? So that's essentially where I believe that entrepreneur spirit started sort of being fed into and also evolved over the years.
mm. Absolutely. And like, even for me, like, I don't know, like, the way I tell my story is you make that sound so elegant the way you've put it, right? It must be a clinician thing. But
Maybe after all the years, it's starting to work.
absolutely. But like, for me, I tell, like, even for me growing up, I'm like, yeah, like when I was 8 years old, 9 years old, I was selling fart bombs for $2 each.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Like, I'm like the opposite end of the spectrum there in terms of the formalities and how elegant I deliver that message, right? But it is, like, I've been the same sort of way, right? I've been um, always grown up around entrepreneurship. I wouldn't say grown up around entrepreneurship. I'd say, like, my biological father my dad,
Mm.
he always tried to make businesses work and didn't have much success,
Okay.
which I find interesting. But I don't know, for me, I was kind of always just born with this entrepreneurial spirit about me. I was, from a very early age, 8, 9 years old, selling DVDs, in the schoolyard, you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
That is
High,
an entrepreneur spirit, true entrepreneur spirit.
that's right. High school, looking at the problem where, a lot of people that were smokers, they kept having their cigarettes confiscated because they had these big bulky packets, and then the individual cigarettes kept snapping. So then I'd go and I did like a cigarette repair service, 50 cents. Here
Oh,
you
wow.
go, done. I used to just get rolly paper and fix it for them. And if it wasn't that, it'd just be like, selling cigarettes for $1. Not really the best, the best business to run. But can I tell you, Darshini, I was clocking in like $300 a week. You know
There
what I
you go.
mean?
I feel like we should
So
do some classes together to some business people.
absolutely, we'll do some children and entrepreneurship classes, but maybe I'll leave the
Yeah.
part with the cigarettes out.
Maybe so we don't get flagged.
Yeah, absolutely. So no, it's good, and I do enjoy that. I do like the fact that a lot of the people that even I'm connected with, I think there's a lot of similarities, a lot of things in common, which is just so good. I do love that,
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, look, have you got any future plans for this? I mean, what's kind of, I'd love to know, with Healan Centre, like what's 6 months look like from now? What's 12 months look like from now? What's 5 years look like from now? What, how does that all look?
That's probably one of my favorite questions because I love scaling and expanding and also, asking that question to myself on a daily basis. I mean, look, for Healan Centre, that's only one of my current one of my projects at the moment. And there's definitely so much potential. So like I said, we're expanding to the adult sector next week, which is amazing because there's also a huge gap that hasn't been looked into. And, if we don't really look after our adults, it's going to affect our kids one way or another, so it's trying to build the future generation up, but also trying to take care of the older generation at the same time. But it's also going into other spaces like NDIS and also support services because there's definitely much more efficient ways of being able to provide quality services. And it just needs a fresh set of eyes and a young set of eyes to be able to understand how we can integrate technology and healthcare together. And I believe that's essentially going to make this whole space look very different in the next 6 months. But in 1 year, I would say, 1 year, I'm hoping to see it go international to bring this space of education about healthcare and also education about teaching our young ones how to upskill themselves about skills of emotional regulation. These are standard skills that we wish that we knew as kids rather than sort of being classified the usual, you're just a naughty kid. We're trying to change that whole language within our community, which is a big thing because then parenting looks different in 20 years. Parenting, the whole parenting game starts changing where we're starting to encourage kids to think outside of the box rather than conforming them to go, you need to fit a certain mold. And even though you're not designed or, neurologically put that way, we're going to force you into that box. So we're hoping more young entrepreneurs get built up. We're hoping for a younger generation that becomes stronger and bolder.
Is there like a DIY home course on the horizons at all? Because I'm just thinking about like any conversation that comes with kids, and especially because obviously I've got my 2 daughters as well. Very passionate topics for me, right? And I look at the challenges as a parent, and I say to myself, like my youngest, she's in kindy right now, and she has some like I could tell you it's so interesting. She started kindy. And like she's been so excited, right? So she's like, "Oh my god, I can't wait! Oh, like this is awesome! I love school." So she's going through this these big changes in her life.
Yeah.
And even we had like a meet the teacher last week, and I sat down with the teacher, and the teacher was like, "Oh, if I could have 19 more Millers, I'd be stoked." And I'm like, "That's great news," And so now I'm kind of looking at all of the different factors here and I'm going, wow, she's got a really good start. She's coming home. For Christmas, I bought her these books with this disappearing ink, and it's got like a groove in it, so you can practice your
Oh, that's
spelling and
amazing.
practice writing words. And
Yep.
so I've been helping her on the educational development side of things. But then, now we're seeing a bit of, I suppose emotional regulation issues where, she's like, oh, Dad, I'm going to miss you now. And that's a normal part of it, but it's like a little bit more elevated than my experience so far, right? Like Delilah had those things when she was that same age, but it wasn't as bad. And so excitement's there to go to school, but then it's like, oh, I'm going to, because they don't have, because one's in grade 3, one's in kindy, they have recess and lunch at different times because it's a very big school. And so, she's like, oh, I miss Delilah, I miss you, and et cetera and so on. And then she gets home, and then there's like, we encourage communication here, and I say that quite often, and I say, like, she'll be crying and bawling her eyes out, hiding in a corner, being all sad. And I'm like, what's wrong? Like, just you've got a voice, you've got that big voice of yours. Why don't you speak up and tell me what's wrong? Tell me what you need. It'd be something simple like, I just wanted to ask you a question. And I go, okay, well, why don't you ask? But it's the behavior that comes before that first, right? Which is
absolutely
having a hard time getting her out of that, getting out of her own head, really. And I'm trying to get her to come forward. But there's this disconnect between her being able to regulate those feelings, and then those feelings take over, which causes her to be silent and not actually, and be, basically not talk to anyone, not speak up, not tell people what she needs, even though I encourage it at the very first instance.
Yeah,
so that's,
wow.
You know what I mean? So
definitely.
I was going to say, I would love, like, if there was any courses like that, parents could do at home that are on the horizons, I would definitely sign up. Is there anything, well, first of all, like, was there any advice you have to give? And second of all, is there anything on the horizons for courses for parents to do at home?
Oh, absolutely. We believe about supporting parents, and I think parents play such a critical role. And parents go with all intentions. Well, most parents go with all intentions of, being able to provide them now with, going, speak up, communicate, let's have some quiet time, let's start talking about emotions. So there's a huge shift and change that already has happened in the last 10, 15 years. I mean, think about parenting 15 years ago, it looked really, really different. So we are starting to make those changes. And now, like, for example, in your particular case with your young one, it's being able to now give the kids the opportunity to learn the skills from themselves. So we invest so much money and time in terms of the education, where we have the opportunity to teach a child how to say their A to Z, your ABCs and your 1, 2, 3s, but we still send them to a space to be able to also practice that and also implement that into the education on a long-term run.
Hey, yes, I'm talking to you, and I know it looks like the interview, but it's actually not. We're taking a really quick, short break so that way you can hear me out. I really want you to hear me out here. If you are a business owner, you are building your personal brand. I mean, you could be anyone. You could be a real estate agent. You could be an astronaut, an IT professional. It really doesn't matter who you are and where you fit into the world. This interview is great for you. If you're really struggling to make content, and let's face it, right? When we get our phones out and we're like, taking selfies and doing videos that way, it just comes across as inauthentic. And the other side of that as well is the fact that it's just so hard to come up with ideas of what kind of content to create. And this is where our interviews absolutely bring a powerhouse and an arsenal of, basically a war chest in terms of your organic content marketing that you're creating. We create the TikToks and Reels for you. Here's the thing. I've got some great news. The great news is that this interview is completely free. We boost your SEO on Google because we go and feature these videos like the one you're watching on YouTube. And not only that, but we also give you free content to post to TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and all the rest of it as well. So if you haven't already, in the description down below is a link to Linktree, where you'll see the opportunity for you to book your very own interview and get free content for your personal brand or your business as well. I'll see you on the other side of the screen.
So ideally, why shouldn't we not do that in terms of their mental health, in terms of skills to actually build them mentally stronger? Because that's probably going to be the biggest shift and change that I'm hoping that by opening these services and also opening parenting programs 100% to be able to educate parents going, look, we need to now also be fixated on their mental health. As much as we're wanting to implement these skills within a home environment, we need to allow them to go to spaces to expose them to these skills and also to feel confident that they can do this on a daily basis. You know, that it's part of their nature, where Delilah feels that, you know, Dad, what are you let me go help out with my younger sister, and, you know, let's go and talk about some skills, you know, have it part of their natural language. Whereas if you're starting to only introduce terms like quiet times and let's talk about big emotions, only in the last couple of years, only within the home space, then it is going to be quite a big change for them to start adopting that language because they don't practice it, you know, as often as we would like them to. So I definitely would encourage, you know, yourself and a lot of parents to start looking into prioritizing to building resilience within our children's minds, which is going to set them up to be, you know, bigger, stronger, and also very successful. But
and
yes,
Dharshini,
definitely.
how do people do that? You're telling us to do that, right? But how do we do it? Is it, you know, can we expect some courses, some online courses that we can all sign up to in future? You know, things like that, take home homework, strategies. You know, I like the idea of having like a program that you can sort of go to, right? That gives like a list of instructions on what you can do. Is that kind of stuff on the horizon at all?
It's definitely in the horizon. So we are opening up to parental spaces. We also are looking into the importance of supporting parents. I mean, supporting parents like yourself, where, you know, you feel that you're doing the right thing, but how do you actually continue to feel that you are on the right path? You know, that can sometimes be really scary when you're doing it by yourself or even with a partner, to go, look, you know, things are changing very differently. Child one looks really different to child two. So what about you guys, you know, supporting you guys and giving you guys assurance to know that you're doing the right thing? So we are opening up parental spaces within our physical clinics, but we're also doing it within our online spaces in March. So only a couple of weeks away before we do launch the online programs, and online sort of awareness about what we can do as families within the community.
That's going to be brilliant, honestly. And please, you know, after this interview and when it does get published, you know, I'd love to have like a sign up link or something like that we could put in the description, you know, just to share with people, like if they wanted to sign up to get information about that, you know, leave their email address kind of thing and just get some updates and some resources. We'd definitely love to do that. But hey, Dharshini, you know, it's been such a great interview, and I've got a fly that's just joined our interview too, right?
And need some emotional regulation, so he knows where to come.
Clearly. Yeah, exactly. He's like, can I come in too? I have a question to ask, right? Love that. Look, it's been a great interview. I think, you know, there's going to be a lot of people that watch this interview. They're going to be, you know, seeing a lot of value in what you have. And I think a lot of people are going to want to be able to watch your journey and see you evolve. Like if people wanted to reach out or see what's coming up next, where could they find you?
Absolutely. That's an amazing question, but thank you so much also. So they can definitely head on to our website, which is www.healancenter, Healan Centre.com, or they can also sort of get me linked up on my Facebook and also my Instagram to also view the other projects and all other sort of services that we offer besides Healan service.
That's amazing. And we'll make sure we put all those links in the description as well. So guys, you know, check down below as well. And for all those that are listening, you know, go and like, follow, subscribe, you know, get in touch with Dharshini one way or another. Show us some love, show us some support, because that's what we're all here for, right? Chances are that if you're here, you're likely in business, you know, or thinking about business. And, you know, creating a community where we all support each other is going to be important. So, and if you had any questions, you know, I know some people might be against the idea of, you know, medicating kids, for example. We'd love to hear that. Like, you know, put forward your constructive, emphasis on the word constructive, arguments. Like if you want to be controversial, that's fine. You help us with the algorithm. I don't mind. But, we'd love to hear your comments and your remarks, and we'll be checking the comments and every now and again, and we'll definitely be engaging with you guys too. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button for the LaunchDay podcast as well, so you can get all of the alerts of when we publish our new episodes and podcasts. Again, Dharshini, thank you so much for coming along. I've really enjoyed it. It's been great.
Thank you so much for having me. I'll chat with you very soon, but thank you heaps.
You're very, very welcome. And for everyone listening at home, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. We appreciate you. You guys are awesome. And we'll see you again on the next one.